Hi, everyone. Welcome to Memoir Church. Um, this is not Marnie with me here. This is actually Sybil Rosen, and she's our featured reader and writer, and among many things today. Hi, Sybil.
Hi,
So
Suze.
glad to
Hi. Thank
have you here.
you so much.
Yay. So Sybil, I just in talking to you before everyone came, I heard you and Marnie were talking about there's a play being written about that has been written about you and your friendship, and I
Oh,
love that.
oh,
So do you
good.
want to speak a little bit about that?
This is a play that a friend has written, Catherine Cortez. That's
Mm,
opening next week in Los Angeles, and it's
mm,
about um, a circle of friends, five friends, and it's based on myself, Marnie, a couple of other people who are watching here. So
mhm,
there's five of us, and the play takes the characters through time and
mm,
um, it's a beautiful evocation of sort of persistence and love
mm.
and how
Lovely.
women
And where is
take care of each other.
that's so great. Where is it playing?
It's playing at the Lee
What theater
Strasberg
is it?
Theater. I think it opens September 9th and has 12 performances. Yeah, yeah. So
Nice. Well, very
it,
exciting.
yeah, it's called River Time.
Well, let's segue into your writing. About this piece really spoke to me about preserving our little pieces of heaven, what's important to us, where we find our peace and our rootedness, and the piece is called Paradise. So I'm going to take myself out of this equation and highlight you as it should be. And if you want to set it up
I will. Let me
for
do.
everyone, that would be great.
Okay. I won't say too much about it. I think you may have some sense that it chronicles. I wrote it in pretty much in real time when it was happening.
Hmm.
So it chronicles this month of when the woods around my house. I live in a green belt. Electric plant has a 500-acre green belt that my house was grandfathered into years ago, and so they came 2 years ago. So I've lived within this forest for 20 years.
Mm,
2 years ago, they came and all around the house. They took out 110 acres, just
mm,
giving you a sense of how extensive it was. So these pieces come from that writing.
good.
Okay,
Paradise.
okay. Paradise wasn't entirely unexpected. 2 years ago, mysterious blue blazes began to show up on trees along the gravel driveway up to the mailbox. The new marks were different from the bright yellow rings that circle our property line trees like gold wedding bands. These rich blue blazes were large and rectangular, spreading from tree to tree into the forest beside the county road. They shone like cobalt shields in the thick woods across from what my husband Glenn had dubbed the boneyard, the grassy open space where neighbors leave deer carcasses during hunting season and smashed armadillos all times of the year.
Mhm.
From the beginning, the blue blazes spooked me. They were big and blue enough to mistake for strangers in washed denim lurking in the woods. I imagined the ghosts of Union soldiers trapped in the trees, the spirits of the men who had torched these forested foothills on General William Sherman's scorched earth march across Georgia.
Mm,
One day, I ran into the fellow who applies these blazes, a trim, spectacled, middle-aged man with a brushy mustache and tank of blue paint on his back. Hidden behind a tree, he might have been missed completely if it wasn't for Shine. The dog spotted him, always a reliable compass, the needle of his nose pointing in the painter's direction, tail circling propeller-like in a 360-degree wag. He's a black and white combo of snap-on parts, head too large, legs too short. Yet somehow it all comes together in an absurdly handsome way. He loves people more than other dogs, if that is possible. At the moment he alerted me to the man's presence, I'm fairly certain I was talking to myself, as any 71-year-old widow who lives alone will do. We don't often encounter strangers in the woods. I covered my embarrassment by asking the fellow what he thought he was doing. Spraying a narrow blue oblong onto a slender beach. He patiently explained that he was a contracted surveyor for the power company whose greenbelt this was, and that he was laying out a parcel to be clear-cut sometime in the near future. My heart flip-flopped. Behind me, a line of blue blazes already sliced through a shimmering glade of thick, looping grapevine and overhanging heart-leaved mulberries, the perfect setting for Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, with fairies, rude magic, a forest goddess in love with an ass. The spray painting gave the painter a misty blue aura, as if his energy field had been splattered one too many times. I wondered if he was the same person who'd banded our trees with yellow blazes. Whenever Glenn caught a man with a tank coming through the woods, he'd run out and try to stop him. "Don't paint me in," he'd shout. The man would smile. The man would smile and paint the way the man would smile and wave the paint nozzle in greeting as if he were deaf. Only once he asked Glenn what he meant. "If you don't paint me in," Glenn spread his arms to gather in the expanse of green belt on both sides of the river, "all this belongs to me." "Yes, sir," the man answered pleasantly. "That's why I'm painting you in." There lies my predicament, too. For 18 years, I've walked a wooded paradise that extends far beyond the handful of acres stitched to the hem of the house. Every February, I hike up the drive in the fog-laden dawn to listen for the first spring peepers, tiny tree frogs serenading from the short-lived vernal pools in the boneyard. When the puddles dry up, there is always some mystery to explore. The fragile skull of a fox, the scimitar tushes of a pot-belly pig left during the swine flu scare, and strangest of all, an electric piano parked upright among the sedges, perhaps to accompany the frogs. Closer to home, across from the mailbox, dense woods absorb the crumbling remains of a 19th century homestead with a shallow root cellar and a mossy half-dug well. Daffodils and redbuds bloom in the spring, planted, I suppose, by the woman of the house. I can see her in a starched white apron bending to pick flowers. At the edge of the homestead is the path Shine and I have worn over the 7 years since Glenn died, rambling down through the woods to the floodplain. This is the walk where my eyes learned to seek out mushrooms, where I absorbed the habits of buds and box turtles. In the floodplain, when the river overflows in early spring, bottomland becomes swamp, and the reflections of bare trees waver like watery roots below an ephemeral, movable mirror. Then the yellow blazes that paint us in melt away unheeded. It has been all too easy to believe the forest would always be there and that it was all mine. It's water.
So nice, Sybil.
Thanks. Okay. I jolt awake to the sound of saws whining and tree trunks crashing to the ground. The loggers have started early, before the first light. I throw a shirt over my pajamas and hurry up the hill with Shine. I've no idea what to expect, but I cannot stay away. At the top of the drive, the noise is deafening. All around is a full-on work site. The wet road is churned up from the tracks of lumber trucks and bulldozers. On the hillsides, heavy yellow machines like big-jawed herbivorous dinosaurs are devouring trees. The remnants of the old homestead have already been leveled down to bare red clay, perforated with the studded footprints of machinery tread. The generous oaks and pines that once shaded the well have vanished. The air smells like varnish. The entrance to the path to the floodplain is obliterated. Saplings bent and pushed across the opening, make an impenetrable barricade closing the way in. On three sides of the mailbox, uprooted trees are tossed about like abandoned giant pickup sticks, while the flayed, broken slider trees and mashed vegetation resemble nothing more or less than a war zone or the wake of an F5 tornado. The shock is making me nauseous. My feet have trouble moving. To make matters worse, in my haste, I forgot to bring a leash. All at once, a black pickup truck comes barreling around a curve. The dog runs toward it in greeting, as he will do when loose. I shout at the truck, "Slow down!" It does. When it gets to me, it stops. Inside the cab, I catch a glimpse of reddish beard and tousled hair, a kid with hunched shoulders. We don't look at each other. "I saw your dog," he states, torn between apology and defiance. My voice quavers. "There's people living here." He hunches lower. "I wasn't going that fast." I look at him. He can't be 20 yet. He's probably late for work. "I'm upset," I sputter, exercising a flair for stating the obvious. "It's an upsetting morning." He drives on. His back windshield is stenciled in white letters, "Get off my ass before I inflate your airbags." I can relate to the sentiment, if not the act. Underneath is a black and white American flag, the white stripes shaped like rifles and assault weapons. Yeah. I grab the dog by the harness and flee. At home, I am furious. Eme Juku Kanungyo, a Buddhist chant involving Avalokiteshvara, the goddess of compassion, is one I turn to often in deep distress. Now I alternate between loud, frantic chanting and profane cursing in the direction of the loggers. I say horrible things to them and about them and their mothers. I pace the house. I can't work. I try to meditate through the felling and the falling. I realize I have to go back up. I have to walk the land. If I don't stare down the destruction as it's happening, I'll never be able to absorb it. I go alone. Shine shows no interest, and I don't insist. When I get to the top of the drive, a machine trundles around the corner toward me, maybe 200 feet away. A low-lying circular saw is cutting a row of slender trees along the edge of the road. I freeze in horror. A beech sways ominously and falls. "You fucking bastard!" I yell into the mayhem. It's easy to be brazen when you know you won't be heard. What is the point? These trees are too slim to be milled. Their roots held that hillside in place. The saw hisses and spits smoke as if it had a mouthful of wood chips. Boom, 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 down go the trees like doomed dominoes. The machine keeps coming. Terror overtakes me. Suppose the driver doesn't see me and I'm cut in half. I run back down the drive, past the bend, turning up into the mulberry glade. Still, I'm startled when a man's voice calls out, "You all right?" I do an awkward about face like a teenager caught out after curfew. On the drive about 30 feet away is a tanned, broad-shouldered, white-haired man of possibly 70. I'm guessing he's younger than he looks, that his pale lemony hair was once bright orange. He has a kind, cragged face. Are all loggers attractive? Is that a prerequisite for the job? Same time, I realize I am wearing torn loose pajama bottoms with the cuffs tucked into my socks so that the pants poof out at the calf. Always a good look. And though I've been up for at least 2 hours, I have yet to look at my hair, which tends toward tangled in the best of conditions. This is what comes of living alone and basically unnoticed. 8 months of 18 months of shutdown have ossified every reclusive impulse I own. It's rough, I shout over above the machines. I could be talking about myself. I don't own this land, but I love it. Most of these trees are dead anyway, the old man shouts back. We both know that's not true, else why would he be here? Is he trying to placate me or himself? It must be distracting for the loggers when a local wanders the carnage with a long face, an unsolicited reminder that trees are being killed at a numbing rate. As if reading my mind, he says, the trees will be replanted. That does help. There's comfort in remembering nature can renew. Thank you for telling me, I say. A distant tree falls with a sickening thud. I just wish I could change that, I cry, pivoting instinctively toward the sound. The mess, the waste. I'm surprised by my bluntness with the stranger. It just feels like you don't care. We do. He sighs, glances away. You live in that cabin? He waves down the hill. When I answer yes, he looks at me directly. You the writer? There's curiosity in his voice and awe tinged with fear. Now I'm doubly confused. This is the man I just called a fucking bastard. And though I'd prefer not to like him, he has given me an unexpected gift, a glimpse of his vulnerability. Is he afraid I might write about the logging and what I might say? No doubt he has reasons to worry. He puts up his hands as if I'm holding him hostage. His hands are stained the color of rich topsoil. They could be clothed in wrist length brown gloves. You just let me know if there's anything I can do, he states, and I believe him. My eyes brim. How about stopping? I'd like to say. Instead, I murmur, thank you, and turn away, trudging into what's left of the woods. That evening, I wait till the top of the road is completely silent. The light is fading, but I have to be alone when I walk the stricken areas. I'm terrified to see what may have happened to the boneyard. It's worse than anything I could imagine. Every shrub, every frond of grass, every bone shard, even the electric piano has been pummeled away into nothing but red clay tread. The backdrop of woods into which the puddles and weeds once melted has been relegated to wherever pulverized matter and energy go. Flat as a tarmac of hardened clay, the site already holds 2 long wagons filled with logs waiting to be hooked to truck cabs and driven to the mills. Across the road, that entire swatch of woods is now a wasteland, as raised as if it had been bombed, leaving the broad tabletop of the ridge a bruised and bloody moonscape. There is one act of mercy. The ancient oak, whose fern-covered limbs shaded the boneyard, has been spared. On the inner side, the lower branches have been torn off from contact with the trucks and flatbeds, but the magnificent tree is still standing, relatively unscathed. Cabin lore has it that Glenn's 3 stepkids saved this tree from loggers 50 years ago, leaving a note asking them not to take their beloved tree away. I weep with gratitude. I weep with relief and a curious gratitude. The old oak has survived 2 loggings. Surely I can survive this one.
Mm. Mm. Lovely.
Okay. All right. Regret stalks me. It waits for me at night when I close my eyes. Why can't I recall the woods across from the boneyard, the way they used to look? I passed them at least twice every day for years. Pressing down on memory, details emerge reluctantly as if they are dazed to find themselves the past. Images bob slowly to the surface, coming into focus like Kodachrome photos immersed in pans of chemicals. Greedily, I grab at them, fitting them together the way a triumphant child finishes a new puzzle. A decaying piece of charred fence post along the county road, a length of barbed wire grown into it like a curl of petrified hair. Red honeysuckle vine in bloom, twining high up the rough trunk of a loblolly. The spot between the twin crimson buckthorns where Shine slipped into the woods to find a stick to carry home. He won't lack for sticks now. The land is bereft of everything but sticks, pine needles, and torn vines, drying and dying on a trammeled hilltop, exposed to a sun without shade. Remorse crumples me like a piece of paper, wads me up on the floor. The overnight erasure of beloved landscapes is like the disappearance of a part of my body. Not the same loss as a true amputee, but grief akin to the black despair following Glenn's death, the absolute certainty that something nameless and essential in my core had also died. I regret that I didn't get to know every one of these lost trees better, more deeply, that I didn't recognize them as singular individuals with a decided energy, a distinct sensibility. These are the trees that help me to heal. When did I thank them for that? I could not see the trees for the forest. The
Mm.
forest itself has a numinous presence, an intense, inviting wholeness. And now that forest and these trees are irrevocably, utterly gone. I regret that I am only now fully taking in the depth and breadth of tree genius. Rooted in one place all their lives, unable to flee whatever earth and sky throw at them, they compensate for immobility with ingenuity, growing new parts, bending toward the light, adapting. No one tree is like another. And now the experiments of Canadian forest ecologist Suzanne Simard have revealed other intriguing elements of tree survival. Apparently, trees adhere to the same guiding principle that we humans find so profound and so challenging: love thy neighbor. Simard has discovered that much of tree life is communal and invisible, unfolding in the dark, oozy underworld beneath our feet. Eons ago, trees figured out how to keep their families stable and healthy. They had to help each other. They had to learn how to talk to their own kind. So trees came to communicate through their intermingled roots with the assistance of microscopic underground fungi so numerous a teaspoon of topsoil contains miles of intricate fungal filament. Those warty, color-splashed mushrooms that sprout in your yard, delighting the eye and often the palate, are the reproductive organs, the odd, fragile flowers of these synaptic threads. Trees offer fungi the sugar that sunlight and chlorophyll concoct in their leaves, while fungi in return deliver water and elemental nutrients stoked in the soil. Robust trees can nurture one another across species, oaks to hickories, birches to pines. doling out information, advice, and sympathy in an isotopic vernacular of carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus, to name but a few of the elements trees speak through. Ancestor trees teach seedlings the lessons of endurance, sending extra nutrition until they are tall enough to find their own light. Hub trees, Samard calls them mother trees, though they are not all female, extend their embrace to encompass and care for a root-wrangled web of hundreds of trees. My mind goes back to the old oak in the boneyard, the one that was spared, and the many that were not. What happens to a forest after an event of mass destruction like a hurricane, a fire, or a clear cut? Do trees grieve? Can they heal? During a TED Talk in Alberta, Samard said, quote, "When we cut, we need to save the legacies, the mother trees and networks, the wood, the genes. You can take out one or two hub trees, but there comes a tipping point. Because hub trees are not unlike rivets in an airplane. You can take out one or two and the plane still flies, but take out one too many, or maybe that one holding on the wings, and the whole system collapses," unquote. And there lies my deepest regret. My blind participation in the lust for timber. When I consider the amount of paper I've handled in my writing life, with nary a thought for the source, or the times I extolled an almost mystical extension of nature into our human sphere by celebrating the trees that give us fiddles, wooden bowls, the sturdy walnut desk I write on, inanimate objects that make human existence richer, more elemental, more alive. How easy it has been to romanticize the journey from living tree to helpmate desk. Ashamed of my ignorance, the willful obtuseness of my human privilege. I had never before seen up close the cost to the trees and the land itself to create what we call civilization.
Mm.
One more.
Yay.
I hope you're saying that for the
Lovely.
record. One morning I discover the gate lying on the ground, mangled and crushed under a lumber truck's tires, the posts that held it upright, now uprooted. As I stare at the damage, the lemon-haired logger comes hobbling up the road after me. His brown hands go up in apology. "We're going to replace your gate." "Are you limping?" I ask before I can stop myself. "Getting too old for this," he says, scrunching his shoulders and neck, lifting a knee. I sigh. "I know what you mean." Nobody has to remind me that logging is brutal, dangerous work. Felling on these steep hillsides, the loggers can look more like rodeo riders, clinging to bucking machinery instead of horses or bulls. The pounding, punishing work, even for a young man, has to be hard on a human body. The men work in small crews of 4 or 5, so everyone, young or old, pulls his weight. Apparently, this poor fellow has been given the job of managing the locals. "We'll get you a new gate," he repeats. I shrug. I'm not worried about that.
Hmm.
"It's the trees," he replies once again, reading my mind. "They will grow back. Pine needles would have gotten them anyway." I can't blame the beetles, I say. And for some reason, this makes him laugh. Does he think I'm talking about the band? "We're losing money on these trees," he offers in explanation, "with so many dead." "I'm sorry to hear that," I say. "I guess it's painful for everyone." He cuts his eyes at me. "I know," he says. "I had a mama." I'm not sure whether to laugh or cry at this, so I do neither. He goes on. "She wouldn't have liked this." He frowns. "Used to not be this way." "Harder?" I venture. "Slower. Now it's just shakes his head, waves at what was once the homestead. I don't know why they took that there. Weren't that many big trees. I wouldn't have bothered. I try to keep an edge out of my voice. What do you mean, bothered? Not worth it? He says, not worth to us what it is to you. I look at him. His mother tree is alive and well in him, feeding him still. He is teaching me how to talk to him. He is a
Mm.
country song. He smiles. You wait 2, 3 years and baby pines be tall as you. He turns to go. I call after him. What's your name? He stops. Tommy. And I'm Sybil. He nods. I say, your mama did a good job, Tommy. He emits a sound, something between a chuckle and a grunt, and limps away, brown palms down at his side, flapping goodbye. I walk on toward what used to be the boneyard. A black pickup comes up the road toward me. I gesture for the driver to stop. He is young, red-haired, a round, plump, bearded face strung with white earbuds. Are you the person I yelled at the other morning? I ask. He pulls off the earbuds, a slight smile on his lips. No, ma'am, he drawls. That was my brother. Ah, I exclaim. Well, I don't know if I'll see him again, so could you please give him a message for me? Yes, ma'am. Tell him I apologize. That was my bad. I shouldn't have had the dog running loose. I didn't know what we were walking into. I guess I was in shock. His face lights up a gentle sun with a fiery corona. Yes, ma'am, he says. I'll tell him. And on he drives. Everywhere I turn, my eyes fall on logging's dismal handiwork. I'm almost to the point of giving up paper, but what's the alternative to lumber? More concrete? Maybe. More plastic? No, thank you. The loggers are like the vet who comes to put down your dog. Nobody wants that job. Instead of cursing them, maybe I ought to be thanking them for doing a job I couldn't and wouldn't want to do. Am I becoming the Patty Hearst of clear cutting? Toward the men who have hauled heaven away.
So lovely. Thank you so much, Sybil.